All right, at this time, we're going to call to order the City of Riverbank Planning Commission December 20th meeting. So at this time, we will do a roll call.
Okay, Chair Steve Link,
Here.
Vice Chair Natasha Basso.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner John Dinan
Here.
and Commissioner Joan Stewart is absent. Commissioner Ben Rubin.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Any planning commission member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. No one's declaring that. Before we open up for item number 1 on public comments, Mayor O'Brien has asked for a moment for comment on the agenda.
Thank you. I'm not commenting on the agenda. I'll wait for that at another time, but I do want to thank all the commissioners for all your hard work this last year. You've had some difficult decisions to make. We have not always seen eye to eye, but I want you to know that you have my complete faith and confidence in your ability and decision making. So I just look forward to the next year. And between now and the next year, I hope you all have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, we will open up for public comments. Members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes per person, and each person may speak only once during this time. Time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, state your name and city of residence and make your comments directly to the Planning Commission Board. So we are open to public comment.
Good evening and happy holidays. My name is Jamie Agers. I live at 7730 McHenry Avenue, Modesto. That's in the unincorporated area of Stanislaus County. You have some new members on the commission, so I'll give a little bit of background. I live in the project area of the proposed Riverwalk development, which would extend the city of Riverbank from its current boundary all the way west to McHenry Avenue at the solar farm and Al's Furniture, all the way north McHenry Avenue to the river. We are opposed to that development, and we are very concerned that even though our property lives within the project area, we were not notified of the project when the notice of preparation was available in June of 2021. It's very concerning to us to have learned that the city of Riverbank adopted a strategic plan 2 years prior to that, which included implementing the Riverwalk development. So before we even knew that it existed, the city had incorporated it into their strategic plan. And when they updated their strategic plan 2 years later in 2021, they included it again. We're very concerned because the property, which the project includes 1,500 acres, which you already got 1,500 acres added to your sphere of influence in 2016, which is the Crossroads West area that's now being developed. This area is prime ag land. It's in river bottom land, and it's not an area that should be developed into up to, according to the project, up to 3,300 homes and businesses, because These are soils of the highest possible quality, and homes should be built on soils of lesser quality. So when this project comes before you, which it will, please vote no. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Conrado. I live on Hogue Road, Modesto. I'm also here to let you know that we oppose the Riverwalk proposed housing development called Riverwalk. Jamie was very clear on some of the reasons why, and I'll reiterate some of those, especially since you have new members. We wanted them to have a full understanding. This is prime agricultural land, uniquely fertile in the world, not only in California, not only in the United States, but the world. We supply food for the world, and we keep those costs reasonable for people to live, to buy food, high quality food. This land is river bottom land. It's subject to flooding. I'll mention it, but just yesterday, another article came out about mega flooding, not just flooding, but mega flooding. When a government approves land for development, people think that land is safe. And this land is not safe for building homes. People would have trouble getting insurance. Insurance would cost a lot of money. If there's a flood, they will be wiped out, or they'll suffer hardships of financial to rebuild, to repair. They can lose property as well as their lives. This project also talks about senior housing. So if you have someone, an elderly person in these homes, and there's a flood or an emergency, there's a lot of houses in there. There'd be a lot of people in there that don't move very quickly. So really, really consider what you're approving or not approving when this comes in front of you. This property also goes against the Stanislaus River, which of course would automatically include riparian habitat and wildlife, which would be impacted, of course. There's an infrastructure issue. We're talking about traffic, sewage, possible eminent domain issues. So the list goes on. When this project comes before you, I hope you strongly advise the city council against voting for it. Thank you.
Good evening, happy holidays. My name is Dan Whetstone. I live at 7824 McHenry Avenue. My back windows overlook the river bottom that the Riverwalk project is proposed to be developed on. Again, hopefully some of you or most of you have come out and looked at that area. My objection, of course, besides it being in my backyard, is that it's just so far from the city of Riverbank. If you really do build down there, it'll be surrounded by, miles of agricultural land. So I just think that, this thing's way ahead of its time, that we should build out to that area before we approve a project, especially of that size. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barney Agers. I live at 7730 McHenry Avenue. It's on the western edge of this proposed Riverwalk project. My home overlooks the whole 1,500 acres. I've lived there for 35 years. It's probably the worst possible location for a project like this. A classmate of mine became the chief legislative analyst for the state of California and was that for 25 years. And she and Dr. Your father. Yes, wrote a book, a dissertation on the impacts of building in a floodplain. And basically, the bottom line is the developer does it, leaves, and when it floods, someone else picks up the bill, bails everyone out, and it's the state. The levee that protects along the river, protects this acreage, was a part of a reclamation project. It is not certified by the Army Corps of Engineers. When it does seep or leak, which I saw in 97, it goes underneath the levee. It doesn't come over. It could come over in a mega flood, but all you have to do is look in your own backyard. There's a little housing development here right next to the river that flooded in 97. Many parts of it did. Jacob Myers Park was had water coming up and encroaching there. We all think it's not going to happen, but I was in the mountains in 1997 with 6 feet of snow when the Pineapple Express came through, and it rained for 3 or 4 days. And I tell you, when I came home, I was worried that we were going to have lakefront property out there. We didn't, but we call that a near miss, I guess. Anyway, when this project comes before you, please do your homework. Study it hard, because as my wife said, this is prime farmland. It isn't the place. If a farmer gets flooded out, he takes a loss that year, one person. If 3,300 people, or even half of them, have 3, 4, 5 feet or water all the way to their roof, that's a disaster. And I don't think, if I was sitting in your chair and voted to approve Riverwalk, I wouldn't want that on my conscience. Thank you and happy holidays. Well, I encourage you to vote no, absolutely.
All right, thank you. We are now on number 2, the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are to be acted upon by a single action of the Planning Commission Board, unless otherwise requested by an individual Planning Commission member.
Chairlink?
Close.
Yeah.
We'll close public comment. Thank you. And then, so otherwise, the recommendation of the staff will be accepted and acted upon by motion of the Planning Commission Board. So item 2.1 is posting of the agenda. The agenda for the December 20th Planning Commission meeting was posted at the Community Center and Bulletin Board, City Hall North and South Bulletin Boards, the Post Office, city website, and emailed to the library on December 16th. Do we vote on each individual item or all 2s combined? So item 2.2 is the approval of the December 20th, 2022 agenda. This provides an opportunity for the Planning Commission or staff to recommend that an item be placed on the agenda for discussion, or to adjust the proposed agenda to allow an item to be taken out of order. And item 2.3 is the approval of the minutes of the September 20th Planning Commission meeting, having been read by the individual commissioners, and stands approved as submitted.
I'd like to just add that we're going to remove item 3.1 until January.
All right. Do we motion on?
And I'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Just make sure no public comment on the consent calendar.
Okay, I will open it up for public comment on the consent calendar. And in turn, close public comment on the consent calendar.
Okay, roll call. Chair.
We needed a motion
Sorry,
first.
motion. Oh, you
I
gotta make
move
a
that we
motion.
approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Okay, Roll call now. Chair Link,
Yes.
Vice Chair Basso. Is she on there?
Yes, did you hear me?
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Dynan
Yes,
and Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Passes 4-0.
Okay, so now on to item 4, which is the public hearing. 4.1 is the general plan amendment 01-2022.
Chair Lake, I think, don't we have the item 3.1?
We're postponing that until January. Then, so it is a rezone proposal 03-2021 and architectural and site plan review 08-2021. The Summerfair Commerce Center at 6448 Claus Road. The applicant's requesting a general plan amendment to modify the existing medium-density residential land use designated to a community commercial and to rezone the existing general commercial site to planned development, which will allow the development of a self-storage and recreational vehicle facility and associated improvements on the 5.9 acre site. The architectural review of the site will include one 2,000 square foot office / apartment use, 623 controlled climate controlled storage units, and 62 RV and boat storage spaces with concierge service. The initial study and mitigating negative declaration have been prepared for this project. Do we do public comment first, or
No,
do you do
go
the
ahead and give my
slide
presentation first.
first?
Okay.
Very good.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, audience. As you had stated, this is the Summerfair Commerce Center, a general plan amendment, rezone, and architectural and site plan review. So the project consists of the following action items. The general plan amendment, 01-2022, would take the project from medium density residential to community commercial. The site has been MDR for many years, and it has been inconsistent with the site's longtime general C2 zoning. So let me step back just a second here. This project was a little bit over 12 acres, and a little less than half of it was mapped with the subdivision called the Heritage. So when that was mapped, that's when it was already MDR, but that's when it got changed to a residential PD, the whole site. After that, we had a lot line adjustment that separated the two projects. So now we're coming back to rezone and to do a general plan amendment to the commercial piece of this formerly 12 acre plus parcel. So the rezone will be going from a residential PD to a commercial PD. As I'd mentioned, the 12 acre site was rezoned to a residential PD. The two projects were recently separated with a lot line adjustment. Architectural and site plan review. So the commercial side, the 5.9 acre site, as you mentioned, provides storage units, parking garages, and parking spaces for boats, as well as an office manager and apartment, so someone will be on site all the time. Here is a kind of an aerial view of the site plan. The upper left-hand corner is Claus and Sierra Street, where Sierra will come through. Right now it's segmented on, and so it only goes to Claus on the east side, and this project will bring it to Claus on the west side from the Diamond Bar West subdivision area. The project, you can see all the garages and the storage units lined up. There's been a lot of work done on making sure that the traffic and circulation within the project is able to accommodate the larger vehicles like moving trucks as well as RVs. The only entrance into the project from the public side would be from Claus Road. There is a gate proposed for the north side on Sierra Street, but that is an EVA, emergency vehicle access only. So you will not see RVs coming in and out of that gate right there. So on the north side of this project, we have some subdivision houses. On the east side of the project, there will be subdivision houses. I'd mentioned it was the Heritage, which is an approved subdivision map. On the south side, it runs adjacent to the railroad tracks that are there. And then, of course, on the west side, we have Claus Road, just north of the railroad tracks. Here are the elevations. We also have them on these large cardboards here in front of us. If anybody in the audience needs a better look at them. We have the different elevations. The only two-story feature is to be located right at the corner of Claus and Sierra Street. At that point, there is only one home that is in kind of the view of the second-story apartment. It was originally set up to be further down the street close to Diamond Bar West, but we went ahead and moved it to make sure that it wasn't overlooking subdivision front yards over there. As you can see along the wall there is, I want to say, two sides that have full walls, and then there are sides that have both walls, which are 8 feet tall. There is a typo in the staff report that says the block wall is 9.5 feet, and that is my fault. I read the wrong number when I was looking at the site plan. It is an 8-foot tall block wall. There are various architectural features that are metallic in nature that add height and visual interest to the walls. And let's see, I think I mentioned that there is a combination of wall and 7-foot wrought iron fence on Sierra and on Claus near the area of the manager apartment. This is the colors and materials that is proposed for the building. They're kind of light, mellow colors, nothing that garish or stand out. The landscape concept, there will be enhanced landscaping on Claus Road and on Sierra Street. It'll be a combination of trees and bushes and flowers, and an application for the review of the landscape and irrigation is normally submitted after project approval. So I don't have a list of the plants and the trees yet. That will come later. There is one small issue on the Sierra Street side where the connection will be made. There is a parcel that has that yellow triangle on the right side, which has a dotted line. That dotted line is actually where the city right-of-way should be in order to continue a sidewalk from Claus down Sierra Street. The developer reached out to that homeowner. One of the possibilities was to trade the small yellow dotted line triangle for the larger yellow triangle and create a new fence for that property owner who was not interested. So at this point, we have a sidewalk that stops at that person's property, and people will have to walk around that corner until we can somehow acquire it. The city does have a right-of-way expert who has reached out to this person and will continue to do so till we get this resolved. This project is consistent with the general plan. According to policy design 2.3, there needs to be provided adequate traffic signage to make sure that circulation flows freely onto and within the site, and that will be provided. Design 2.5 requires attractive streetscapes, which the developer will provide on Claus and then Sierra Street. Design 8.3 requires quality materials, which the applicant will do, not only using blocks and standing seam metal roof, but will also have these architectural metal panels that was discussed earlier. I've been told that this project has a kind of a sister project with using those type of materials out at Pellendale. So you might be able to see it actually live out there. Design 10.1 requires the project to provide pedestrian and bike access from rights of way into the project. And that is provided not only with the driveway coming in, but also various sidewalks. In speaking about sidewalks, there is a temporary sidewalk right now that Diamond Bar West put in from this project site where Sierra starts down to Patterson Road, and that will be improved by this project. That will allow the kids to walk to the high school. This project will also be putting in a crosswalk at Sierra and Claus for families to cross Claus and be able to go to the middle school, Cardozo Middle School. Land policy 4.3 recommends the city allow flexible standards to get projects like this to move forward, especially commercial projects. And the city has been working with the developer and tried to be flexible. One of the ways we have been flexible is the east wall of the project will back up to a subdivision. So there won't be like any traffic along that wall. There is a 5-foot setback and there'll be buildings there, but there'll be that separation between the project and the houses. On the south side of the property, we didn't require a lot of architectural features because of the railroad tracks right there. And then on that side, the buildings, the storage units actually back up against that wall. That's not something that usually the city allows, but in looking at the other self-storage units throughout the city, city policy or practice has been to allow that. So this was also allowed as a flexible standard for this project. An initial study of mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project. There was no evidence in light of the whole record that this project would have a potentially significant effect on the environment. There was a biologist out there who did a report and a study and did not find any sensitive species or plants. This project or this site has been vacant for a really long time, and the property owner has yearly disked the site in order to keep the weeds down and such. So there aren't really any sensitive colonies of plants or animals on the site. Excuse me. There is a mitigated monitoring report that is connected to the negative declaration. It does say that when the project is ready to start construction, they will have a biologist come back out just to ensure that no sensitive species has moved in since the last time a report was done on this. So to summarize, staff recommends that you recommend to the council for approval the general plan amendment and the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. We would also like you to recommend to council approval of the rezone and approval of the architectural and site plan review. Normally, we would have the Planning Commission approve the resolution for the general plan amendment and the architecture and site plan review. But because the property is not rezoned yet, your approvals would have to be contingent on the city council approving the rezone. So it just seemed like an extra step for you to, and for the council to to take care of this. And so we went with the method of having you recommend all 3 items to the city council. Looks like I put this slide in twice. Thank you for listening. I'd be happy to answer any questions. When it comes time for the public comment period, the applicant is here with his engineer and would be happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. So at this time, we open up for public comment then.
We get to ask questions first.
We do get to. I have a question then. On
Okay.
on the east side, the development is there, are the backs of homes facing west, or are there homes with their front yards facing the,
All the houses on the east side have backyards that back up to that wall.
okay. So they get a nice solid wall as a backyard.
Right, they'll have
instead
an
of a
8-foot
wood
tall wall.
Place in 20 years.
Correct. And like in Crossroads right now, there are some houses that back up to a wall. And city policy has been to allow them to have an accessory structure or something that's close to that wall rather than maintaining a solid 5-foot setback. So having a wall there won't reduce the size of what they're allowed to do in their backyards.
Thank you.
Mhm.
On the north side, the same question. On the homes on the north side, will their front yard be facing this project?
No. On the north side, there will be landscaping, sidewalk, curb and gutter, the street, and then on the opposite side of the street, there are some front yards of homes. So I think I measured a couple weeks ago and it was 65 or 70 feet from the front yard of those houses to the actual project site, the wall.
So there will be a wall.
There will be a wall.
They're going to see a wall across Sierra Street.
Correct. They'll see a wall. They'll see a little bit farther down, they'll see some wrought iron fencing and they'll see landscaping between the wall and the sidewalk on that side.
And if I understand everything, Sierra Street, when all is said and done, will go all the way open to Claus from Diamond Bar. And then there'll be a crosswalk to the existing Sierra Street on the west side of.
Yes, that's correct. During the construction at Diamond Bar West, the city did receive an irrevocable dedication of this part of Sierra Street. So it's already in the city hands and ready to go. And you are correct. Traveling the opposite way on Sierra Street, when you get to Central, you will be able to cross over Central and then take Sierra Street to the Diamond Bar East Basin. It won't go completely to Snediger Road. It'll stop within the subdivision.
And last but not least, did I read something in your report about the city would have to annex some portion of land in this project?
The annexation is into the Community Facilities District 2016-01. All new home subdivisions and commercial and industrial projects are required to annex into that CFD. And what that means is they will be participating in the future operations and repairs of the sewer system, water system, road system. It'll help pay for police services. So it's a way of new development helping to pay for itself and future improvements.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Questions? So at this time, we will open it up for public comment.
Good evening, everybody. Happy holidays. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Steve Mothersell, president of and owner of of Summerfair Commerce Center LLC, the proponent. I'm not an out-of-towner. I mean, I do live out of town, but I grew up in Empire, went to school at Downey High School, MJC, and then on to Utah State after that. Been around a long time. We've done a lot of development in the valley over the years. I lived in Riverbank for 10 years, back in the late 70s and 80s, and take a lot of pride in what we do. I want to really thank staff for all their hard work. They've been wonderful to work with, and they've been very open and honest and responsive, full of really good suggestions. We've listened, we've responded, and they have as well. And they've really been a pleasure to work with, and we've enjoyed it very much. I think this is, I'm going to speculate this is going to be the nicest storage facility in the city of Riverbank, and possibly in a 15-mile radius. We've studied them all. We have, we hired a firm out of Colorado that specializes in market studies for these things. And I think the radius was 15 miles. And they found that there's 97% occupancy in the facilities. And you might say, my gosh, these things seem like they're popping up all over there. There's a lot coming out of the ground, but they're needed. They're needed, and they provide a wonderful community service, helping getting RVs and boats off the streets, out of the side yards, into buildings, and just the needed storage. You know, there's a lot of small lot development where, you know, houses are very vertical. The subdivision that's on the east side of this is a smaller lot subdivision intended to be more affordable. And there's just not a lot of room for people to store stuff. So this is going to fill a very needed void, I think, on the east side of Riverbank. People will have access to this. And I think we're probably the only one in the region that has these individual RV garages and boat storage units. They're very popular, and not just for RV and boat storage. I think we're going to find there's a lot of them fill up with a lot of other stuff. You know, small businesses use them for the storage of tools, equipment. Small businesses use them for inventory storage. Of course, you can't store anything in there that's toxic or a dangerous material of any kind. You can't have, the only fuel that you can store in there is what's in the gas tanks. So very strict on those kinds of restrictions. I think it's visually a very attractive project. There is one more mistake. There's not 623 condition spaces. There's 623 total, but only probably about 25% of them will be conditioned space. We're not sure what that is, but during our actual work on the construction drawings, we'll make a determination. The problem is it's hard to analyze that market and what that need is, because there's not much around. So there is some need for it. Our consultants, this is John Anderson with Precon Solutions. He's worked with me from the very beginning. This is my first storage project. This is another one of many that he's worked on and overseen, and both in design, construction, and it's been a pleasure working with him. He's been a wealth of knowledge. But their air conditioned or conditioned space is very expensive to build. You don't want to go over too much, because, you know, if it were in a core city like downtown Modesto or right near there, where, you know, you have county, you have city offices, you have, you know, the school district offices, people that have a lot of files that need to be kept, or materials that need to be kept in conditioned space, be a different story. But we really see that our location is going to really appeal to people that have their RVs and boats. They use the foothill lakes and stuff to recreate with. We think we're going to be well positioned in that regard. It's not just another storage facility. I'm a real lazy RV owner. When I get done from a trip, I don't want to do all the things that are necessary to put your RV away. I just want to hand it to them and have them wash it, drain the tanks, put it away and bring it out the next time I need it and get it ready to go again. And that's what this this services are going to be offered. And they're very much needed. We're going to cater to the larger, more expensive RVs. Those are the people who really want them stored indoors. They like to have their own individual spaces for them. And we'll be able to accommodate that. So we hope you like it. We hope you support it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What's your definition of a conditioned space? Strictly air conditioning or is it?
No, it's air conditioning and heating. It's a stabilized environment for the extremes on both ends of the temperature ranges. So a lot of things, it's very hot in the valley out here in the summertime. And these spaces get very hot on the inside, and that can be very destructive to very sensitive materials and artifacts and family photo albums. And so you need to minimize the swings to a degree to help preserve those things. What's that? Oh, security. It's got a lot of security in it. Besides having a full-time resident manager, there will be lots of cameras, of course. There'll be a card key access. They'll come in. They're one of the reasons why they got to come in and go out of the same gate, because they won't be registered. They can't sneak out the EVA gate. Okay, it's locked. Only the emergency services will have access to that. But the security systems monitors them when they come in. You know who it is. And if somebody were to open a door that didn't swipe their card, the security system notifies the office, so the manager can go out and see what's going on. And a lot of really good features. And I might add that we've worked really hard to come up with a plan along the railroad right away, because that's the backside of the RV garages, and so it's a very tall wall. So we've worked very hard to come up with these decorative panels that really add a lot of definition to that wall. But the materials that we finish this wall with needs to be a material that we can protect from graffiti, because it's going to be a target. And there's if the graffiti experts see that there's security and they know that their artwork can be easily washed off with from the protective material, less of it will happen. So it's a very big challenge to come up with those design concepts that can be scrubbed, so to speak. What else can we say about security?
Yeah, it's great for the neighborhood. The traffic side is one of the lowest traffic indexes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just, can you state your name, please?
John Anderson, 19949 Lockford, California, Ian Court, Lockford, California. Yeah, security wise, typically we don't have break-ins in self-storages. One reason is cameras, motion sensors. And like Steve was saying, the units are actually, each unit, if you open a unit without putting your code in at the gate, on the screen like this, there's a map of all of the facilities, like an aerial map, and it will alarm that one unit. So it's not like we got to go figure out where. We know exactly what unit was open. So the security is very strong. If you're in hallways, everything you see on the site plan that has the kind of dark shaded in the center, those are hallways which are typically would be climate control. But we also have cameras pointing in each different direction depending on how long the hallway is. That's always a concern, to be in a building by yourself without having somebody looking after you. And so on those things, we think about all of those potentials. We also make sure that the buildings have quick access. So we don't have a hallway that's 300 feet down from the door. So we have side entrances to exit and lots of motion sensor lights for LED lights. When you're actually in there, you're not going to get stuck in the dark. Old time, they used to have a timer that you would turn, but then you're over there and you're going, oh, I ran out of light. Now you'll never run out of light, which is really great. But again, in reference to the traffic, once it stabilizes, right now, the industry is showing about a 18 to 20 month
stabilization factor that it used to take 36 months. Now we're down to 12 to 18 months and we're stabilized occupancy. So what that means is once the rent up is stabilized to 80%, you basically have a very quiet, if somebody's going to come in and Christmas is going to be busy, you're going to pick up the Christmas ornaments and whatnot. It's a little bit seasonal, but there will be times where it's extremely quiet, very low traffic is what we experience most of the time. Yeah. Thank you.
What is concierge service for boats? Could you explain the concierge service?
Sure.
Thank you.
Concierge, especially in Las Vegas, Palm Springs, it became very popular. A lot of folks don't actually live in those areas. And so when they do get back from a big trip, they want to drop the keys because they already have a contract for concierge services and there's different levels. So you might have a level that you just want the tanks drained, washed and backed in. You could have a level that maybe the ice chests are going to be emptied. It could be when you're getting ready to leave, they're going to pull it out and they're going to put ice in the ice chests and make sure everything is clean. And so it really depends on the plan that you're going to choose. But the whole idea is to be able to drop your keys in a drop box. When you get there, get in your car that's in your unit and go home. So it's actually a pretty nice service. Okay, thank you.
Real quick. Oh, go ahead. I didn't realize.
Well, I was just gonna close by saying there's a couple of projects in the Palm Springs areas that actually you can email them your shopping list for what you want them to buy and put in your refrigerator. I don't know that we'll get to that level in Riverbank, but we're going to give it a shot. Also, please note that there's a wash facility so that units can be cleaned right there. They're not cleaned. They're not washed out on the pavement or anything inside the project. They're a facility there that recycles its own water, cleans its own water, just like the drive-through car washes you use here. And and so that'll be used by the concierge service, of course, or if somebody who doesn't want the concierge service, they want to do it themselves, then they can do that. Yeah. Yeah. But to the question about what direction the houses face that are up against that 8-foot wall in the back, those are going to become premium lots because the houses that are designed for those lots, like I said, are very vertical and they're not really big lots. So we tried to minimize, it's our subdivision. We tried to design it so there was as few as possible of houses that backed up to each other because your windows facing each other. And so I really see those lots that back up to that 8-foot wall on the east side as real premium lots, as well as the railroad lots. I mean, there's not so much railroad traffic out there that it's a deterrent for people buying a lot that backs up to the railroad tracks. So you're buying backed up to more open space. So we're pleased with that. But we're excited about this project. We think it's going to be a real nice one. We think you're going to be very proud of it. And we can't wait to get started if you support us.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that Commissioner Basso, if she has any questions for the applicant, or Donna, that she has an opportunity.
Commissioner, everything
All right.
sounds great. I don't have any questions. The questions were asked and answered. Thank you.
She can try one more time. I believe she said her question was asked and answered.
Yes, I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me. Yes, some great questions were asked and answered. And I've been listening. Everything sounds great. I don't have any questions. So.
Great, thanks.
Since we are in public comment period, excuse me, I would like to mention that before 4 o'clock today, we did receive one email concerning this project, and the gist of the the email is that they oppose this project. Thank you.
Is that what you handed out?
Yes,
Yeah.
you each have a copy.
Thank you, Donna.
Right? So we will close.
make sure no one on Zoom?
Oh, then we will officially close public comment on this one. And then we'll go.
Chairman Link, I'd like to make a comment before I make a motion.
Certainly.
I went out there and checked the area. My concern was the homeowners that are already there. And I feel that what's now a vacant lot, and good for you for taking care of it all these years, I think this will be an improvement for that entire neighborhood. So I'm making a motion to approve resolution 2022-013, 014, and 015.
I'll second that.
All right, hold on. Okay, roll call. Chair Link,
Yes.
Vice Chair Basso,
Yes.
Commissioner Dynan,
Yes,
and Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Okay, it passes 4-0 on all three.
I would like to mention that the Planning Commission resolutions actually don't approve this project, but they're recommending approval to the City Council. So you can expect to see this item on the City Council meeting of January 10th. Thank you.
Right, we will move ahead to item 4.2, zoning ordinance amendment 02-2022, an ordinance amending Title 15 land usage by amending section 153-03, the definitions in multiple sections here related to tiny house villages. The proposed project is exempt from analysis under the California Environmental Quality Act under the common sense exception that CEQA applies only to projects that have potential for causing significant environmental effects as specified in section 15.061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines. The proposed project is also exempt from CEQA pursuant to state CEQA guidelines section 15305, which are minor alterations in land use limitations. So at this time, we have presentation.
Yes,
The
good
tiny
evening
houses.
again, Chair and Planning Commissioners. Tonight's presentation on the tiny house villages will be made by David Niskanen of JB Anderson Land Use Planning out of Ripon. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Chair, members of the commission, David Niskanen, JB Anderson Land Use Planning, 139 South Stockton Avenue in Ripon. Tonight, we bring forth today the zoning ordinance amendment 02-2022 related to an ordinance for adding tiny house villages as a permitted use in the residential zoning districts and adding regulations for the development of tiny house villages. Just to give you a little summary of what we're looking at today and what we're asking Planning Commission to review and recommend to council is multiple amendments to the code related to tiny house villages. First, we're adding two definitions to the code. One is dwelling tiny house and the other is tiny house village. We're also amending the residential zoning districts. That's the R1, which is single family, R2 duplex residential, and R3 multifamily, as well as the CX1 zoning, which is mixed use, to add tiny house villages as a permitted use in each of those zoning districts. And we're also adding sections 153.170 through 153.177 related to tiny house village regulations. These would be new sections in the zoning title of the Riverbank Municipal Code. Just to give you a little background on this item, as you recall, we conducted a public workshop with Planning Commission in July of 2022 to discuss options in a tiny house village ordinance. The feedback such as setbacks, off-street parking, square footage, lot coverage, et cetera, has been, that was provided by Planning Commission and the public, have been incorporated into the tiny house village. There wasn't many changes between what we proposed and received feedback on to what's actually in the ordinance today, which I'll go through in detail. All right, the first part of the ordinance amendment is to add the definitions for dwelling, tiny house, and tiny house village. Anytime you have a use in the code that you're going to be allowing for development, we need to make sure the definition is very clear on what that use means. So for a dwelling tiny house, we are proposing to define it as a detached single-family residence within a tiny house village. And then further, we defined what the maximum square footage of 800 square feet and a minimum floor area of 150 square feet. And this is further replicated in the actual regulations as well. So there's consistency between the definition section as well as the actual ordinance or actual section for tiny house villages. The next is to define what a tiny house village is, and we're proposing to define it as a minimum of 5 tiny house dwellings on either a single parcel or individual parcels of each tiny house dwelling as part of the same subdivision. Purpose here is to make sure we cover both types of tiny house villages as we just discussed in July. One is it being part of a subdivision where each individual lot will have a tiny house, as well as a single parcel having multiple tiny houses as part of a group of tiny houses and residential units. The next is to amend the residential zoning districts chapter, which is 153.031, 046, 061, and 067. And we simply added the permitted use of tiny house village in each of those districts. So we just added it to the list that's allowed. And then this is the bulk of the proposed ordinance amendment. We are looking to add new sections to provide provisions and regulations for the development of tiny house villages. The new sections include purpose, applicability, to make sure they're very specific to tiny house villages so they don't bleed into other types of proposed developments. Density, occupancy, design and development standards, most of which we discussed during the July public workshop. Landscaping, open space, accessory structures, and architectural and site plan review. And I'll go through each section and kind of provide an overview of the proposed amendment. If need be, we can flip to those specific pages in your packet and they're numbered so we can go there and discuss the regulations in a little bit more detail if you'd like. So the first is section 170, which is purpose. And this provides why we're doing the amendment, essentially. So the purpose is to include providing development regulations for tiny house villages, encourage creation of more usable space for residents of tiny house village developments, promote centrally located common open space areas, and maintain a detached single-family character along public streets. The next section is the applicability. You'll find this in a lot of development regulation ordinances. And the purpose of this section is to clarify that regulations contained in this title apply only to tiny house village developments. The next is density, and this serves two purposes. One is to define how density is calculated for tiny house villages. We wanted to make it very clear on how that's calculated because a proposed tiny house village development must adhere to the general plan land use designation density, which I'll go over in this next slide. For reference, the R1, which is your single family designation, is up to 8 dwelling units per net acre. R2, which is duplex, is up to 12. R3 is 16 or more, and then CX1 is 8 or more, which is the mixed use zoning district. The next section is related to occupancy, and the purpose of this section is to clarify that the tiny house village units shall not be rented on a transient basis, which means that it's a period of less than 30 days, so they have to be rented for more than 30 days. The next section, which is the design and development standards, this is the bulk, like I said, of the proposed ordinance. And it provides the specific development regulations, which I'll go through in detail of each one. And like I said, we can always flip to the specific section to discuss it a little bit further. So as we discussed in July, the minimum parcel size that we're looking at is 1,800 square feet. And we defined it even further with providing a minimum width for interior lots and corner lots and a minimum depth of 60 feet and then the width of 30 feet or 40 feet for corner lots. The floor area is the same as what we defined it as in the definition section, which is a minimum of 800 square or a maximum of 800 square feet and a minimum lot size or minimum square footage of the unit of 150 square feet, excuse me. And lot coverage, we're looking at no more than 50%. Height, maximum height of 20 feet. And then the yards, this is the same as what we discussed during the July workshop. So front yard, we're looking at 10 feet. Side is 4 feet. Corner side yard is 10 feet, which is along a public street. Rear yard 10 feet, and then garage setback from the street to the garage is 18 feet. Just as a note, in the development regulations, we provide a number of projections like fireplaces, eaves, things that may project into that side yard or front yard or rear yard setback. So we provide a clear definition of what would be allowed and not allowed. And as it relates to 4-foot side yard setback, there was discussion in July about how would that relate to the building code and does it need to be 5 feet or does it need to be more to be consistent? What we're proposing to do is to reference the building code. And if a property owner wants to go 4 feet, they have to adhere to building code requirements for fire, life safety. And that's fairly common with development regulations for zoning where we don't want to include specific building code requirements. We just want to make sure we reference it because things may change in the future because building codes update every 3 years or so. The next part of the code is fencing and patios and porches. For fencing, we're referencing the R1 single family residential district, which requires a maximum height of 7 feet. And then there's provisions for fencing in the front yard, which is a reduced height. And for patios and porches, we're suggesting, and similar language to single family residential district where there's a minimum square footage of the size and a minimum width and depth, which is a depth of 6 feet and a width of 8 feet. Next is lighting. This is a really good regulation because we want to make sure that we cover tiny house developments that are on one single lot with private accesses and private drive aisles and parking areas. So we require in the regulations that those common areas be lighted to city standards. And then off-street parking, no change between what was discussed during July, and now, which is 1 space per unit and 1 space of guest parking. But we added a provision that common parking areas be clustered so they're not scattered throughout the entire development and that there's a minimum amount of parking that would constitute a common parking area. And this is something that's a little new compared to what we discussed in July. We added design standards, which is requiring a minimum of 4 building elements. And there's a variety of options, including windows with visible trim or recessed windows, dormers, bay windows, entry enhancements, variation roof types and materials. We also allow provision that the community development director can review and approve, other elements that are not specific in the code. And what this allows us to do is to make sure that there's a variety in development and enhanced materials, especially along public streets, because we want to make sure that the development is not just a square box or something. We want to make sure there's a variation of development. The next is pedestrian connectivity, and this is simply requiring that the development has to connect between the tiny houses, common open space areas, as well as parks and transit to the best of their ability and consistent with city regulations. And we also include that the development shall have a deed restriction be placed on the property. The purpose of this is to notify the property owner and future property owners that there's a size restriction to the house, and also referencing these development regulations as well. A lot of times with very unique developments, it's not uncommon to have a deed restriction. So the new property that comes in will have that part of their paperwork when they purchase the lot or the individual home or what have you. The next is landscaping and open space. And this is we're kind of broken up in 3 areas. The first is to reference the R1 single family residential district for the amount of paving that a lot can have. Right now, it says it's no more than 50% of their front yard can be paved and no more than 50% of the rear yard can be paved, but that may change in the future. So we wanted to make sure there's a reference as opposed to defining it here. The next is requiring a minimum common open space area, which is a minimum of 50 square feet per unit. And then also adding that there's a minimum 300 square feet regardless of the amount of units. So if they're less than 300 square feet per that calculations, they still have to provide 300 square feet for the development. And then the last is adding in a private open space requirement to make sure that there's a usable private open space for each unit, which is 200 square feet. And then accessory structures, the city does allow accessory structures for any residential lot and commercial and industrial. And this purpose of this section is to make sure that there's a connection between the tiny house and the accessory structure. So what we don't have is a tiny house, but we have a 20 by 60 garage or something in the back, even though that may not fit on the actual lot. But we want to make sure there's a scale consistency between the tiny house and what they're proposing for an accessory structure, and that would be reviewed by community development. The next and last section for the tiny house village development regulations is the architecture and site plan review. And this is to clarify that the proposals to construct any tiny house village development shall be subject to the architectural site plan review, like what was discussed during the July meeting. As it relates to CEQA, we're proposing that Planning Commission forward a recommendation to council that the project exempt according to the common sense exemption, and then exempt pursuant to the minor alterations and land use limitations. This provides the development regulations that would allow for tiny house village developments to develop, which at that time, individual CEQA review would happen for those individual projects, as well as the project's not changing any density requirement that's already well-defined in the city's general plan, and any type of tiny house village development would have to adhere to the general plan as far as density and other provisions. And our recommendation tonight is first to conduct the public hearing and then approve resolution 22-16 recommending approval of the ordinance to amend the Riverbank Municipal Code related to tiny house villages. And I'm available to answer any questions, as well as Donna. Thank you.
I'm impressed.
Good presentation. Any public comment or questions?
Whoever's on Zoom, welcome. We are appreciative of your comments, so please go ahead.
My name is Evelyn Halbert. I have questions and I have a concern. When you discussed this item at the last meeting, you were, at the end of the meeting, you were talking about R1 and CX, I think it was. The notice that came out in Riverbank News for the hearing, nowhere in this whole notice does it mention anything but R1. It refers to sections only. it refers to zoning districts and it refers to R1. It doesn't refer to R2, R3 or the CX ones in here at all. And I think that's very difficult for people to know what areas that you're actually talking about. Because I don't live in the R1, but I live in the R2. Well, depending on where you look, what it's zoned. There are no maps or descriptions of the areas because there are several different R1s areas in the city as well as R2 and 3s and stuff. So I don't know if everything is going to have this, what you refer to as the bonus, R1 bonus. I don't, which ones would be, which ones would not have it. Everybody, all those districts would be open for these tiny villages. It just doesn't say that. And I don't really understand these bonuses. My understanding is they're R1 or R1 with bonus. But that sounds like two different zonings, but you're not amending the general plan for all this. It's simply amending the code. And I would think you would have to amend the general plan if you're going to have two separate districts like that. And the other question I have is, as I said, depending on where you look, there are specific plan areas in this city that under the general plan would be zoned R1, but under the specific plan would be zoned differently. There's at least 3 or 4 specific plan areas. So are these areas exempt from this? Or how does it work with a specific plan area? Do you pick and choose if you want it in there, then you go with the general plan? Otherwise, you're zoned as a specific plan. How does that work? That's my question. And my concern about the noticing.
All right. So that is the close of public comment.
Respond to everyone's question.
Okay. Certainly. Give Evelyn more time.
Hi, welcome again. Please share your comments.
No, I just was waiting for answers. You muted me, but I didn't get any answers.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your comments. The first question to address would be your comment, sorry, on the R1 and R1 density bonus. That's not two different types of zoning. R1, R2, R3, and CX1 are the zones. What a density bonus is it allows a developer to apply for a density bonus, which would raise the density of a site that they plan to develop on. And that's nothing new. It's something we've had in our code for a really long time. And I've actually been here 8 years and no developer has taken advantage of that part of our zoning code the whole time I've worked here. As far as your comment about specific plans, if the specific plan has R1, R2, R3, and CX1 zoning, those might be appropriate locations. Some of the things that planning and building will need to look at is the size of the lots, whether or not, for example, a lot can be divided. The state is requiring the city to be as flexible and to bring in as much housing into the city as we can. They're even allowing lots to be divided and a house and an ADU and a JADU. So basically, some larger lots might be able to have up to 6 units once divided. So there is a lot of flexibility now coming from the state as well as requirements. So the city's proposal of having tiny house villages is one of our answers to the state. The state releases what they call RENA numbers, regional. There you go. Yeah, regional housing numbers. And so the city, Riverbank is actually tasked with providing around 1,900 new homes in the next 8 years. And so we see this as part of our plan to help provide those homes and stay in the good graces of the state, as well as help our community with more affordable housing, because these homes will cost a lot less than what's being constructed in the city right now. So we're hoping that some of the people who are couch surfing or almost like permanent renters will have the opportunity to get their foot in the door and take advantage of these smaller sized homes. Did I miss anything?
No, I think Donna explained it really well. Just to add, this ordinance isn't creating any new zoning district. It's just allowing teeny house villages in existing residential districts. A density bonus is a different procedure entirely that allows you to go above the maximum density allowed in a specific zoning district if you include a certain number of affordable units. So those are different concepts. But no new zoning districts. And yeah, it's the same thing for specific plans. Oftentimes they incorporate the existing zoning requirements. And so I would imagine that these would also be allowed in the specific plan areas unless those specific plans or governing development agreements provide something else. So those would be my response. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll close the public comment. Yep. And I'll make a motion to approve item 4.2, the zoning ordinance amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call. Chair Link,
Yes.
Vice Chair Basso,
Yes.
Commissioner Dynan,
Yes,
and Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved 4-0.
Right. The next item on the agenda is item 5 for any planning commission comments.
yeah, I'd like to share some thoughts I've had lately about the commission and what we're doing. And I understand the pressure we're under from Sacramento to build more and more housing. We have to do it. But the traffic increase in the city of Riverbank in the last year is noticeable. The quality of life decline is noticeable. So we really have to balance the pressure from the state and what's happening to the city of Riverbank. Good luck to us.
All right.
Would Natasha happen to have any comments before we move on from this section?
No, I have no comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. On to item 6, any county referral correspondence information. Donna?
Just a moment.
Oh, just new, when we get here, just comment. New, yeah, the new
Okay.
people coming.
Okay. I don't have any county referrals at this time or correspondence. Well, I did have some correspondence. The county was asking me for a copy of our tiny house village ordinance. So I had to tell them no, not yet. But that's all. Thank
We're
you.
getting close. And then staff comments.
Staff comments. At the last city council meeting, some new members to our planning commission were sworn in as members and alternates. And so we will be welcoming them in January. I had thought that since they were sworn in, that we were to do it at this meeting, but no, we need to finish up this year first and meet with them and get them trained and stuff in January. So welcome to those new members. And I would also like to wish all the commissioners and as well as the city council and the community very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope everyone's holiday season is relaxing, yet also safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna. Same to you.
Thank you.
All right, so that is my last time with the gavel here this year. So I'm adjourning the regular planning commission meeting for the city of Riverbank.
Good meeting.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.